Hey Hail Stalkers, happy Friday. Thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox and we are tracking storms across Minnesota all the way down to Texas today. A few places across the U.S. that need to be talked about for storms this afternoon. However, we are watching for a significant severe weather outbreak in Colorado and Kansas tomorrow. So that's really the day to watch, is Saturday. But for today, storms are all over the map. Some hail and wind are likely. That tornado risk very low today. Tomorrow, storms get very close to Denver. Could Denver get hail? Could hail get Denver? Could Denver get hail? We will talk about how close we get here in just a few minutes. And then we'll look ahead. A lot of you have asked questions about, will DFW get storms in June or July? Are we done for the year? What about Denver? Well, we'll answer those questions here in just a few minutes. We'll bring in meteorologist Martin Lauermore, but I want to talk about what happened yesterday. Yesterday was mainly a wind event. You know, we had a few storms in the morning that produced some hail across the Oklahoma and Kansas state line. Other than that, a few tornadoes down to the Gulf Coast and very strong winds across the East Coast yesterday, anywhere from the southeast all the way up to our New England states. We still have some ongoing storms from that tropical storm that is now officially on land, Tropical Storm Arthur, the first of this year. Some strong storms that brought some pretty decent wind yesterday and a few tornadoes. That'll be ongoing for today, but more of a wind risk today. Talk about wind. Did you guys hear those loud storms in DFW through the overnight hours? Just west of Fort Worth, we had a significant severe thunderstorm warning at 3 o'clock this morning. This is a very loud storm. This was for wind. So if you ever see these hatched lines in our severe thunderstorm warnings, it means that it is significant and potentially considerable damage. That's words from the National Weather Service, potentially considerable damage. And what we saw here was some strong winds. We got a few wind reports, not too many. It's hard to get those wind reports when everyone is sleeping through the overnight hours, but this did eventually move right into Dallas. Not too much of a concern at that point, however, dropping a ton of rain, leaving you guys now with some ongoing flooding concerns across Texas. There was still some flash flood alerts in effect just a few minutes ago in DFW. Now here's a look at your storms for today. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 areas to talk about. That one to the south because of ongoing overnight storms and then just a few lingering rain bands from that tropical storm. We've got another area, the most impressive area for hail up in Minnesota, and then from Colorado to Nebraska and Kansas, kind of a sneak peek of what we're going to get this weekend with a few little storms out there that we need to talk about for both wind and hail. And I told you about this weekend. We have an upgraded severe weather risk, a level 3, highlighted there in orange, an enhanced risk for Kansas, southern Nebraska, and eastern Colorado. But we'll talk about that risk for hail in Denver here in just a few minutes. The next day, it's almost like a copy and paste, but we're going to expand it a little bit to the east now as we have another round of storms ongoing across the plains. So we'll talk about the areas that you need to keep an eye on and when and where here in just a few minutes. Here's a look at your wind forecast for today. You're going to see a very common theme with storm risks today. It's a low risk for just about everyone. Now, Minneapolis is probably in the best risk to get severe storms today. We're going to see a few storms across Colorado and a few storms across Nevada as well. But let's talk about Minnesota, because we are seeing an increased severe weather risk, mainly a hail risk in Minnesota. Not too worried about that tornado risk. Some strong wind possible, 65 miles an hour. That's pretty normal. However, that hail risk is looking a little bit more impressive to me. Look at this. We've got some yellows trying to creep in here, some oranges as well. This would indicate golf ball size hail possible in this area. Let's talk about the timeline. I think right around 5 o'clock, if not shortly before 5 o'clock. So if we play this through one more time, here's your yellows that try to move in here. And then, woo, look at that storm that pops up right around 4 o'clock. Now, this will be mostly isolated in this area. For severe weather, it'll be isolated. Lots of rain, but where are your severe storms? Maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 severe storms across the eastern side of Minnesota. These won't last very long. I think that hail risk will be done as we head into the evening hours. By about dinner time, you may still get some rain, but severe storms will be very limited. So there's Minnesota, probably the best risk for hail today. I got you guys up to golf ball size hail. It's the largest I could go. I don't think that we'll see anything larger than golf ball size hail today. And again, I've kind of already talked about that. That's highlighted there in orange for larger hail in Minnesota, mainly on the eastern side of the state, but we could just cross the state line into Wisconsin. Now let's talk about storm timeline across the southern portion of the U.S. So overnight storms are continuing to track down to the south into places like Houston by this afternoon and evening. We've still got some of those rain bands ongoing across the Gulf states as well. That'll mainly be for a wind risk, but we can't rule out an isolated, very, very low risk for tornadoes in here. I'm just not thinking that's going to be a main risk today, mainly that wind risk. Here's again your timing for Minnesota. Better chances for storms between about 2 and 7 o'clock tonight. Storms will be over as the sun goes down, and then you'll be dry through the overnight hours. Now let's get down to the real show for hail, tornadoes, and strong wind. Storms are going to be possible through this evening. However, it's going to be very, very isolated. Again, maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 severe thunderstorm warnings, mainly for hail, probably not for a ton of wind in this area. Moving into Saturday, so Saturday what we're watching for is going to be storms once again firing up just along I-25, and we're going to be very, very close to Denver at this time. So it's all about timing and location. Where do those storms fire? Are they to the west of Denver, and then we could have a hail-on-hail event, a head-on-hail event in Denver? Or are they to the east of I-25 and Denver doesn't even get any rain? That's the question, and we probably won't know until 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. We probably will not know exactly what's going to happen in Denver, but what we do know is we'll see a line of storms, broken line at first, so we'll see these little supercells. Not little, we'll see these supercells that are moving across the eastern portion of Colorado as we head into the evening hours on Saturday. As we get more and more storms, they will conglomerate into a long line of storms, and that's when the wind threat kicks in. So mainly in the central portion of Kansas is where we're seeing that strong wind threat. This will continue through the overnight hours. Look at your time at this point. It's 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, and Kansas City is waking up with a soggy start to their Sunday. Wichita as well, rain is likely to be ongoing through the early morning hours on Sunday, and Omaha even getting a little bit of rainfall on early Sunday morning. After these storms move out, we could still see some severe risks with this, I think especially as we get into the peak heating hours of the day, so the hottest points of the day. But what happens at that time is that this air starts to recover from all of the morning storms, and then we get redevelopment of storms in this area as we head into the afternoon hours on Sunday. We have more storms coming for Kansas City, Wichita, and even throwing places like Oklahoma City and Tulsa into that mix. Now your timeline is a little bit later in the day. We're talking closer to 7, maybe 8 o'clock at night when we're expecting storms to come into this area of the country. Keep an eye on Sunday afternoon. Our radar, our future radar, doesn't actually go out that far, so details are rather limited right now. But what we do know is we've got this area to keep an eye on: Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, portions of Arkansas. And then we've got another area that'll form very similar to Saturday. It'll be like a dry line firing on Sunday afternoon, so it's 2 areas. It's one across Colorado and Kansas, and another on the other side of Kansas into Oklahoma and Missouri. John, before we move on, I know that was a lot of information on timeline. Do we have any weather questions? We talk about a lot of cities across the U.S., so you guys let us know where we're watching from. Do you know if any hail hit Fort Worth today from the storm we just had? I have not seen any reports of hail. I don't think that HailTrace mapped anything either, but I can double check for you real quick. What I do know is you guys had some strong wind just outside of the city, but whenever I looked at storms this morning, they didn't look very impressive for hail.
No reports at all in Texas.
Let me double check if HailTrace mapped anything. I do not see anything for hail. Double check. I think this was more of a wind event. But great question. Let's move on. Let's talk about, so we talked about the timeline for Saturday and Sunday. Let's talk about the hazards now. Where are we going to get that hail? Where are we going to get the wind? Where's the tornado risk? So I think hail will be more likely early on with these storms. So we're talking about the afternoon and evening hours. few supercells are likely in this area. I've kept most areas at that level 1, that low risk, just because of how isolated these storms will be. But places like McCook, Garden City, Colby, Kansas will most likely be more in that range for large hail. Up to baseball size is possible, but I think that'll be pretty isolated. More likely what will happen is up to golf ball size hail. As these storms continue to move across the state late on Saturday and into early Sunday, it'll become more of a wind risk. But I wanted to zoom down into Denver to show you guys just how close we are to having Denver proper in a risk. So you guys are about less than 20 miles outside of this slight risk. And you guys are maybe 40 miles outside of that golf ball size hail risk. So you're very, very close. So that's why we're saying it just depends on where storms form. If they form to the west of I-25, you guys are most likely getting hail in Denver, or at least hail somewhere in the metro. If they form to the east of I-25, if they form to the east of I-25, you may not get any rain. So it's a very conditional risk for Denver on Saturday. Maximum hail size, we already talked about this, baseball size hail. Let's talk about that wind risk, because I told you just a little bit farther to the east and south is where we have that more prominent wind risk. Winds greater or stronger than 75 miles an hour are absolutely possible. This will come through the overnight hours, and it's not just that wind risk. We also have a tornado risk. But before we talk about that tornado risk, I want to actually pinpoint an area that I think will have the greatest likelihood for strong wind. Salina, I know you guys have already gotten hit with strong winds this year. You've gotten hit with a ton of large hail this year as well. Just prepare for those overnight storms Saturday into Sunday, because I think it could be another wind and very heavy rain event for you guys once again. Pretty low risk for large hail. We also have a tornado risk in this area, so it's a level 2 tornado risk anywhere from just south of Omaha all the way into Salina, Kansas, Colby, Kansas, McCook, Nebraska, all included in that risk, and we can put some cities on the board here. Low risk for some embedded tornadoes into the early morning hours in Wichita and Kansas City, but again, it's a pretty low risk. Have multiple ways to be able to receive those weather alerts, because I do think that through the overnight hours, it's a little bit more dangerous for tornadoes, especially whenever they're embedded in this long line of storms. Let's move on to Sunday. So what happens on Saturday will greatly impact what happens on Sunday. Where does that boundary end up after storms leave on Sunday morning? That's where storms will form Sunday afternoon. So right now, I've kept everyone in a low risk for hail, just because I think the confidence is very low about where we're actually going to get storms. And then it's also going to be pretty isolated. We'll have a storm here, storm there. Not everyone getting rain on Sunday. Most of us will probably stay dry. We'll see some storms form, especially into the afternoon and evening hours. This again may be a late event for some of us. And then with those early morning storms, it's going to be an early event for others. We'll have a forecast tomorrow morning, by the way, and we'll talk more about the timeline for these storms. It's so hard to tell this far out. We're about 3 days out right now. What we know is we have an all hazards risk across this area and as far back to the east as Nashville, Tennessee. We don't exactly know where those storms are going to form yet. And we may not know until Sunday morning. We kind of have to watch to see what happens on Saturday. I hope that makes sense. We do have a tornado risk, but confidence is low about exactly where at this point, so I've left it off the forecast. I can talk about significant hail model though. Let's take a look at Saturday. We've got some yellows and some oranges on the board right in this area. That's where we're expecting some of the largest hail. You can overlay this with your rain as well, and you can see that those storms forming just along I-25 there, exploding off of the highway, moving to the east, and into the evening hours, we become a lot more widespread and scattered with our showers and storms, congealing into a long line of storms, and there's your strong wind coming into Salina through the late night hours. We're talking about maybe 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. Waking up Kansas City and Wichita early on Father's Day morning with a ton of rain. All of the fathers who've been praying for rain out there, you got it. You're probably going to have to mow your lawn later on this week. Jaquavius is telling us that he had a tornado yesterday in Macon, Georgia. Yeah, we've got A few outer bands from what used to be Tropical Storm Arthur. I don't think it's Tropical Storm anymore. Post-tropical storm now that caused all those tornado concerns across Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi yesterday. Today, much lower risk for tornadoes, much higher risk for wind. There's your hail risk highlighted in yellow across Minneapolis. Minneapolis just in the dead center of that hail risk today. Tomorrow, Denver right on the edge of storms. Omaha, more of a wind risk. Wichita, probably a wind risk. Kansas City, more of a wind risk and a tornado risk for you guys, so keep an eye on that. A level 2 risk for storms on Sunday. We'll have more information on those storms tomorrow, so make sure that you catch our live noon show tomorrow as well. We have a level 3 flood risk for today, where we just have ongoing storms across the Gulf states. We finally see that start to let up tomorrow, and then we have another flood risk just to the south of Omaha. This is technically for Saturday, but it goes all the way through Saturday morning. It goes all the way through Sunday morning, so this is really more of an overnight risk for flooding in Salina. And there's your forecast. Okay, we have heard your questions. We've seen your DMs. A lot of people are asking about when will we see hail in DFW? What about Denver? What does it look like as we head into the end of June and the beginning of July? Is our severe weather season over? Well, I've called in meteorologist Martin Lauermore to really break this down for you and to dive into the numbers. So let's bring him in to explain what we're expecting as we head into the rest of summer.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird season all year. I mean, we had a crazy March, had a bit of a drop off as we went into May, and now here we are in June, already seeing more of these storms really trying to move through. So let's take a look at our future outlook for what we're expecting as we head into our extended forecast. So this is your large scale. I've got this actually zoomed out very far so we can get a good view of what's going on, not just in the U.S., but around the U.S. as well, because it's important when you're looking at very long-term forecasts. You want to not just be looking at what's in the area, but what is on the way. So we're looking at next Monday right here, not exactly an extended forecast yet, but I really want to set up this zonal flow here, these lines, we call these isobars right here. These areas are pretty much completely flat across the entirety of the U.S. Now, we are looking at a bit of a bulge of low pressure trying to build through into parts of the Midwest. And this is not going to cause a huge ruckus, but we could still see some more of these storms trying to linger in the Midwest. The one thing I want to watch is this pesky guy right here. Big area of high pressure that's going to set in the Mojave, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. As we get into our next Thursday, so this is nearing the end of our June, we're seeing a low pressure trying to build in out toward Alaska. This could shake things up a little bit. Once we get into beyond about our week forecast, things start getting a little more hazy. So take out a little bit of this with a grain of salt as we get into the extended forecast. It's not going to stay that way for very long, but looking at the general pattern, we can still see that ridge pattern really settling in. There's a little bit of a short wave right here trying to move through. This is next Saturday, so about a week, 8 days from now. And again, still watching that ridge pattern developing through, maybe seeing a little bit of that short wave trying to push through onto our last part of our June and into our July. So that is something we could be watching. This is our extended temperature outlook. So this is early to mid-July. This is about the turning of that month as we get into some of the peak of the heating of the entirety of the U.S. So a lot of extremely warm temperatures, at least compared to normal out toward the Pacific Northwest. This is going to continue all the way deep into the south and into the East Coast. You can actually pretty much see where the high pressure and then low pressure is going to be generally setting at. Now, granted, this right here is not perfectly conducive of what we're seeing for that flow. It's going to be much more linear, that zonal flow that we were talking about, but we can still see that influence of that high pressure with much warmer temperatures as we get into our early to mid-July. So we're moving to the temperatures, from the temperatures to our rainfall. A couple little spotty areas that could still see more of the rain, much less rain in parts of Dallas. Now, we're saying rain, precipitation, you can see the influence of, if we're expecting less rain, you're probably going to be getting less hail. More of that, that's where you could be seeing the chance of maybe seeing some more chances for hail. More precipitation gives more chances for those storms to form, which brings you that hail. So again, out toward parts of Denver. Denver's kind of going to be the place where we'll be watching over the next several days, because the one thing I want to note about the extended hail forecast is that with this area for this from our June 28th to July 5th, so this is about that last couple days of June, the first week of your July, seeing a lot of these areas just staying hot and somewhat dry. There will be a handful of chances for some storms, but they're going to be few and far in between. I think our best chance to see that hail is going to be up in your northern plains, maybe trying to stretch in a little bit toward the Great Lakes, but that comes later. I'll tell you about that in just a second. There's going to be expected to see probably more precipitation out toward the East Coast, but I don't think we're going to be seeing much hail out of there. So more than likely it's going to be a lot of just wind threats, but we could still see some storms, as we are going to be seeing the high pressure as it builds back up, that jet stream. We could still see some of those storms trying to build through, but I think it's going to be difficult to get hail in that direction. Moving into your first week of July, right around that, after that July 4th time frame, we're going to be looking at continuing warm and dry conditions across the west into the south, and then the dryness actually starts getting in to the Atlantic coast, because we're going to be seeing basically a high, low, high pattern. That is what we're expecting to see as we get into our far extended forecast. So we've got two areas that I'm looking at right now for the extended forecast. The one where I think we have probably a good chance of this time frame seeing one or two hail events is going to be once again in your northern plains. This is not uncommon. We usually see the hail and general severe threat trend from the central plains to the northern plains as we get into this July, because generally you do have this much drier, much more stable pattern that heat dome effect. So it pushes that jet stream up, where you could still see any of those short waves going to be impacting. You could be seeing those impacts in the northern plains. But I think we could still see the chance of maybe Colorado, Denver, DFW, could be the possibility of seeing one of those storms moving through, and that is really just what we're seeing mainly for the higher precipitation. So if we have one short wave that could move through right into Denver, I think we could get a decent hail event. But if we don't have that short wave influence over parts of the Rockies, I think we could end up getting away with no hail events throughout that first week of July as we get into Denver. So it's a boom or bust type of situation in Denver, but northern plains and eventually maybe into your Great Lakes as well, I think we could see another one of those hail events in the northern plains. So DFW, I know we had that question asked. I think it's going to be difficult for us to get any hail. I'm not saying 0% chance by any means, but climate, the large-scale patterns, not exactly helping the case to get DFW another one of those hail events. But we always say this. Our CEO has always said this, and we echo this. All it takes is one event. So I'm not saying you're not going to see it. I'm just saying that the climate is not being very friendly for seeing more hail in DFW. Denver, though, I think you got a better chance. So extended outlook is looking pretty good if you're going to be in the northern plains or toward Denver. Although, unfortunately, DFW, not so much. So we'll probably be talking more about this as we head into our July later on. We'll give you more likely an outlook for your August as things begin to start winding down a little bit for the hail season. But hail season doesn't really end. So we'll be obviously talking more about that in just a few weeks, maybe around a month or so. We're getting back to your forecaster, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I appreciate that outlook into June and July. So the last week of June, the first week of July, what are we looking for? This is very, very typical to see storms really start to trend farther up to the north as that jet stream does so as well. As we stay in June. Okay, so let's talk about the next 6 to 10 days. What we're looking for here is going to be some warmer temperatures farther off to the west, and honestly about average for everyone else. So temperatures are going to look very, very typical for this time of the year. We're also looking to see somewhat of an active wet pattern. So what we're watching for is going to be rainfall just a little bit above average for this time of the year. So take that rainfall number that you normally get, bump it up just a tiny bit. And that's what we're expecting for June and July. We appreciate Martin breaking that down for us. We've seen those comments, we've seen those DMs. We love to answer those, so we appreciate you guys sending those in. As always, we will have another forecast tomorrow. We usually don't do the weekends, but because of that hail risk just so close to Denver tomorrow, we'll make sure that you guys are updated on it. So join us tomorrow morning, but follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, and give us a call at 855-334-4245 for a hail, wind, or tornado map. If you guys are curious about what storms hit this morning or what storms hit this weekend, we'll map those for you as they happen. Our HailTrace meteorologists are near real time. They're great at their job. They work around the clock, and you can grab a map by giving us a call or emailing us at info@hailtrace.com, or head over to our website, hailtrace.com, for more information. Thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we'll see you back here same time, same place tomorrow.